Hi there, everyone. We'll give everyone just a few more minutes to get logged in. Feel free to say hello in the chat and drop where you're tuning in from. We love to see the range of green grazers and stakeholders across the nation. Hello to everyone who just rolled in. We'll give everyone just another minute. But those that are here, if you want to drop your name and where you're tuning in from in the chat, we love to see the spread of grazers and stakeholders across the nation. Well, welcome everyone to today's Graze on Over. My name is Haley Goodweiler. I'm joining you today on behalf of the National Grazing Lands Coalition. If you don't have much context for our organization, we are producer-led and producer-focused. NatGLC's work ensures that farmers and ranchers remain on the land, wildlife thrives, and all of society really receives clean air, clean water, and healthy proteins for generations. We're thrilled you're here for our conversation today on snowpack and effects on drought management. Today, we are joined by Kendra Young, NatGLC's Western Region Resource Manager, and Brian Domonkos, the Snow Survey Data Collection Officer and a hydrologist with USDA's NRCS. Before we get started, a couple of quick notes. We are recording today's session. The recording will be sent out to all that registered and posted on YouTube. Please use the chat and Q&A to share questions and comments throughout. And we will have a dedicated Q&A time and encourage discussion. Last but not least, if you have any audio or video issues, try leaving and rejoining or check your device settings under the Teams menu. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Kendra to help frame today's conversation. Kendra, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Thank you, Haley, for that wonderful introduction and beginning information. As mentioned earlier, my name is Kendra Young, and I am the Western Regional Resources Manager with the National Grazing Lands Coalition. Today, I am joined by Brian Domonkos with the Colorado NRCS Snow Survey Program. A brief introduction for Brian. Brian is the Snow Survey Data Collection Officer and a hydrologist with the USDA's Natural Resources Conservation Service. Based in Colorado, he manages the SNOTEL and SNOCOURSE networks, monitoring mountain snowpack and hydrometeorological, there we go, conditions in Colorado, Nebraska, Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, and southern Wyoming. In this position, he has expanded the data monitoring network and enhanced the sensor suite. Prior to working in Colorado, he worked in Montana and Wyoming, totaling 23 years in the Snow Survey and Water Supply Forecasting program. He holds a degree in civil engineering and a certificate in meteorology. In addition to work, his favorite activities include spending time with his family, backpacking, backcountry fishing, backcountry skiing, and hunting trips. Today, we will have kind of a general presentation followed by a very hopefully lively conversation about the snow survey program. So to start with, I would like to just ask Brian, what is this NRCS's snow survey and water supply forecasting program, and what does it actually do?
Yeah, thank you, Kendra. Can everybody see my screen? Perfect.
Yes.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, so that's a great first question. Yeah, why do we do what we do? What is the point of the Snow Survey and Water Supply Forecasting Program? In its most simplistic terms, snow is water in the West. On average, about 50 to 80% of the water that we receive in the Western United States comes from mountain snowmelt. And anymore, it seems to be more on the 80% side, depending on the year. But because it's such a large portion of the water that we receive in the Western United States, that's the main reason why we exist, to get an idea of how much that resource there is. More specifically, though, we measure the snowpack by the congressional mandate for two primary reasons. One, to monitor that snowpack so we know how much water there will be, and two, to provide streamflow forecast, basically predictions of how much water is going to come from that snowpack. So while those are the two main pieces, the forecasts are provided and available on the web pages, as is all of the data that we collect. It is available online for use by ourselves internally and by the public. Almost all of our data is made available to the public. So not only is the data available, but we're also providing the tools and products that we generate, such as graphs, maps, data tables, and many other iterations in between of those data sources and data types, which are, again, available to everybody. We also provide some reports that help quantify or dive further into the weeds of exactly why the snowpack is where it is and what other hydrometeorologic conditions exist. So kind of how did we get here? Going back to 1906, a professor by the name of Dr. Church started measuring snowpack in the Sierras that flow into Lake Tahoe because they needed to know how much water there was going to be for spring and summer runoff. And that started in about 1906. For about 20 years, that built up steam, and a number of different states realized the utility of measuring the snowpack for the purposes of runoff, because agriculture was and still is so important in the Western United States. So in about 1934, Congress allocated money for the Federal Snow Survey and Water Supply Forecasting Program. And it took about 2 years for those entities or the federal government to spin up the snow measuring sites and the program. And so in 1936, many of the first snow courses, which are snow measuring sites, were started in many of the Western states. And it's many of these snow courses that are still today measured for the exact same purpose of measuring the snowpack resource. So what exactly is a snow course? It's a transect, kind of like you're seeing here in this slide, or multiple transects with set measuring points along the transect. These measuring points are measured every month throughout the winter, every year year after year in the exact same location. The sites being in the exact same location is essential to comparing snowpack from one year to another. We don't want to go measuring somewhere, 20 feet away or a few miles away. We want to be measuring in the exact same place over and over each year, each month. And so if you can see the picture in the bottom left, that's a picture of an old colleague, Ron, measuring snow with a tube set. He is holding a set of aluminum tubes. They are hollow in the middle. You take the tube and you put it down into the snow all the way to the ground. You read a snow depth off of the graduations outside the tube. When you pull that tube set up, it actually extracts a sample of the snowpack. That snowpack is then weighed with the snow tubes on a scale. There is a weight, and then we get a weight, write it down. You extract the snow from the tube and then weigh the empty weight of the tube. Do the simple math there, and now you have the amount of water in the snow. We typically do these measurements depending on where you are in the country, January 1 through June 1, but we actually make the measurements the 5 working days before the beginning of the month because that's when they've traditionally been measured. So that's kind of how a snow course works, or not kind of how, that is how a snow course works and has worked for the last 90 years, really. But in recent years, we've modernized our technology a good bit with automated measurements and telemetry from those sites. So with these newer sites, we don't have to go out. We don't have to send people out to perform these measurements once a month. We can do it with these automated readings, and these sites are called SnowTel or snow telemetry. So going back to the beginning of the automated sites, in 1964, we started experimenting with automated sensors that were constantly measuring snow. In about the 1970s, telemetry was developed to help the sites actually communicate via radio to central stations and then upload the data into the database. About 1978 to 1981, there was a large contract to install many of these SnowTel sites. Not all of them, but about 1/3 to 1/4 of the network that we currently have was installed in the 1970s and 80s. And then since then, we've been building the network based on need for sites. And in many cases, these SnowTels have replaced the snow courses. In other cases, they haven't, and we still measure those snow courses. And it's years like this year in Colorado where we're having a very low snowpack year where we need to make those snow course measurements to help compare to the longer term period of record since the SnowTel is not so long. Where do we decide to place measurements and sites, data collection sites? We typically place them in the largest contributing area in terms of snowpack. So we want those sites to represent the snowpack in the greater basin. Most particularly, we do that through correlating the snow collection sites, whether it's snow course or SnowTel sites, with a stream gauge down below. Because as I mentioned earlier, we are looking to forecast the runoff in the spring. So we currently use models that, and historically have used models that are statistically correlated between the two sites or a number of sites and one or multiple stream gauges. Now our models are actually more sophisticated, and I'll get into that here in a little bit. Further details on data collection site placement, we typically try to put them on Forest Service land because the Forest Service has a longer typically owns the land for longer, and we want these sites to hopefully operate into perpetuity so they can continue to collect data for potentially hundreds or more years. We often place the sites in trees to avoid wind scour because, at least in Colorado, that's where the largest snow holding capacity is within the treed elevations. We do have a lot of elevations in Colorado that are above tree line, but in for the most part in the winter, the snow actually blows free or can blow more freely in the above tree lines areas and doesn't hold as much snow as the treed areas does. So that's one reason why we don't have too many sites above tree line. At least that's the case for Colorado. In other parts of the country, it's a little bit different. Finally, we like to place sites on divides. One, because it's high elevation, and sorry, that's watershed divides. One, because it's high elevation, and two, because it can actually have implications on 2 or multiple watersheds downstream. So where are all of our data collection sites? Well, spread throughout all of the mountains. As you can see here, the dark blue sites are snowtells, the light blue are the snow courses, and the kind of aqua blue are snow lights, which are abbreviated snowtells. You can see that we have about 1,700 total sites in the US. Over 900 are snowtells, and over 700 are snow courses. Not only do we collect our own data and store it, but we also use a number of other external data networks to help our operations, such as forecasting. We need reservoir data to account for the changes, and we also need streamflow data to correlate our data collection sites too. I know this map is a little bit small, but you can see all of the networks that we ingest data for, including Canada, where they have sites similar to snowtells. The reason we have to do that is because of the Columbia River Basin, right? There's international compacts in Canada. We also have compacts in Mexico, but there are no sites from which we pull data in Mexico. However, of course, we do use each other's data. Zooming in a little bit more closely, in the area that I manage, which is New Mexico, Arizona, Colorado, and southern Wyoming, we have 190 automated sites in that area. And then on the right is all of our snowtell and snow course network in Colorado. And then we have names for all of our sites. They're scattered around, and I'll get into some products like this here in future slides. Okay, so what does a snowtell site measure? It measures snow water equivalent, or SWE, as we affectionately call it, snow depth, precipitation, and air temperature. Many sites have soil moisture, which is soil water content and soil temperature. And we are working to install soil moisture at all of our sites, but it's taking some time. We also collect relative humidity, wind speed and direction, solar radiation, and some other lesser data types that are not at all sites, but the top 4 items are collected at all snowtells. This is what a snowtell looks like. I hope you have run into some in your recreating in the backcountry, but very quickly, this is the snow pillow, or the SWE sensor. It is a bladder filled with alcohol. Then we have the snow depth sensor here, which stands over the pillow to get a snow depth measurement over the pillow. To also understand density, we have an air temperature sensor. Almost all of our sites are off-grid, powered by solar, or in some limited cases, wind. We have the instrumentation shack, or the shelter, and our precipitation gauge, which captures all forms of precipitation. Real quickly, how do the precipitation and the snow weighing sensor work? It's simple. It's just a scale. When the snow measures up, it builds up, weighs down on it, presses up on a hydrostatic head in a manometer tube, a standpipe, and then that head is transferred by weight to the strain gauge or transducer, which then transmits a simple electrical signal to the brains, and from the brains, it's shipped through the telemetry radio to our databases. On the right is a snow depth sensor. These are being phased out, and we're moving to a more modern, skillful sensor. They simply work on a series of sound reflections, clicks. If you're out there and you wait 60 seconds, you'll actually hear a click. It's simply bouncing a sound signal off the snow surface. The time that it takes to receive it, it can tell distance from that, and then it does the math of subtracting what the current snow depth is from what the base height is when there's no snow on it, and there you go. You have your snow depth. While all of these sensors and our technology is pretty tried and true, it's not perfect. We do need to go through quality assurance and control on much of our data. People do wind up having a look at almost all of our midnight values, and we have to go through that about once every day or once every week. We review all of our data. We also have automated data trapping routines. but this is a good plug to keep in mind to just keep an eye out for data. It's not always perfect. So who uses our data? From the Forest Service to the Bureau of Reclamation to the Corps of Engineers, USGS, National Weather Service, the River Forecast Centers, NASA, NOAA, universities and researchers, recreationalists, private landowners, irrigation districts, all use our data. And that's just to touch the surface. There are a lot of others that wind up using our data. Okay, streamflow forecasts. In short, I'm not even going to dive into all of this because I don't even understand quite all of it. But in short, we have the naturalized stream flows, as I mentioned, that go in. We have the snow water equivalent mountain precipitation. Those are the three main inputs into almost all forecasts. In some limited forecasts, there are a number of other parameters such as climatic indices that may go in, but they're not that skillful, so we don't typically use them. And then out come some in different forms and values, the streamflow forecast, and I'll get into these different kind of products in a little bit. So my last slide for this section is to simply point out how important water is here in the Western United States, or at least in Colorado. In Colorado, we have 46 transbasin diversions where water is moved from one basin into another. And for example, this is the Colorado headwaters. Look at how many tunnels there actually are. Some of them are 6 feet in diameter, just pumping water through from one basin into another, because in this case, the South Platte needs it. So this is Denver, of course. Denver is where the majority of the population in Colorado is, and most of the water actually falls in the Colorado headwaters. Not only does the Colorado headwaters provide water to the South Platte, but it also provides water downstream to the 7 states down below, as I'm assuming most of you know.
Thank you, Brian, for that information. Our next section is going to answer the question, or hopefully focus farther on, what does this information actually mean for agricultural producers, and what information in this program do you think is most helpful for producers to learn?
Yeah, all really great questions, Kendra. Thank you. I'm going to go through this a little on the faster side. I probably put too many slides in here because there's just a lot going on nowadays here in the Western United States. I've been providing a lot of presentations recently because of the rather bleak conditions that we have here, but real quick, west-wide, snow conditions are quite poor. We went through a migration in our databases over the last weekend, and some of these products are a little bit dated, so please forgive me. We were still having some trouble getting those products updated even this morning. Some I was able to update, others I was not, but nonetheless, it is all still quite relevant. So what we're looking at here is the northeastern mountains across the United States are doing better. So we're talking about the Yellowstone, the Wind River Basin, I think the Lost, and there's one other basin in Idaho that are doing okay for snow. Forecasts are a little bit above normal. You'll see that here in a little bit. Otherwise, widely across the Western United States, we're looking at below normal snowpack. The further south you go, the worse off snowpack is, unfortunately. And the story is a little bit kind of deeper than that, but showing how poor the snowpack is, this is a graphic of record low snowpack. Dots in red are the worst snowpack in the period of record, and dots in orange are the second worst in the period of record. Zooming in a little bit more into Colorado, again, as we go further south, snowpack has been degrading. We've actually seen a slight decline in some of these basins where we are seeing snow melt at the lower elevations. In the upper elevations, we're not seeing so much melt, particularly the further north you go, but the further south you go, the higher elevations are starting to be impacted by snow melt. Snowpack is a little bit better in the north, but worse in the south in Colorado. Zooming in one more time, looking at the sub-basins, particularly the Colorado and the Gunnison River Basin. The higher elevation sites in the very headwaters of the Colorado here are doing a little bit better at 70%, but lower in this is the Gunnison down here. Snowpack is increasingly worse the further south you go. So those are an example of some of the maps that we provide, and I hope to get into some examples here in a little bit to show you how to get to those maps and how to customize them. We also provide, these are called AWS plots, and it stands for air, water, and snow. So if I refer to it, that's the terminology that I'm using. And these AWS plots come in multiple forms. This is a Snowpack plot. This was updated on the 18th, and unfortunately, I think these numbers are off a little bit. This was updated actually just an hour before I was able to finalize this presentation, or actually before this actual presentation. So the numbers are off but just a little bit, but nonetheless, Snowpack is currently the lowest in the period of record. In this case, we're looking at a 41-year period of record for this Colorado graphic, and we're typically at 13.8 inches of water content. And you can see that we're actually close to the seasonal winter peak, or snowpack peak, as I like to call it. So we're about a month off, give or take, from our snowpack peak at this point. So when you see these on the right, these are the values for the different lines that I have put in the graph here. And this is all accessible. The previous map there, as I mentioned, is accessible to you, and these graphs and outputs are accessible to everybody. This is a projection graph of snowpack and where it could go from here. The dotted lines are the different probabilistic outcomes from the minimum to the max, and also the 50% projection based on what would happen in an average year. Unfortunately, we're not having an average year at this point. So I plotted some analogs of 2002 and 2012, 2018 that happened in the past, and they were poor, what they could look like. This is not a product that is available to the public. It's one that I have generated just recently to help compare where Snowpack is compared to those years that I mentioned earlier, 2012, 18, 2, and then in this case, I was able to put 1981, which is not available in a lot of these graphics because our data was not robust enough at that point. But I created this tool to show that we are still above 1981, but not by much at this point. If we don't get any more snow in the next 2 or 3 days, we will be looking worse than we were in 1981. So almost the worst that we've seen in 47 years. Diving into the Colorado headwaters, just displaying that we can actually show tools at multiple different levels. We have graphs for different size basins. At the Colorado headwaters here, you can also see that we are record low in the 41-year period of daily record that we have. Comparing to 1977 and 1981 using snow course data, we are not quite record low, but we are using these tools. So just some caveats to know about the data types that we provide. Okay, and viewing in another basin within Colorado, the Gunnison River Basin, you can actually see that snowpack is taking a downturn, and that is because those sites at the lower elevations are starting to melt. And here we are lower than 1981 and progressing ever lower. So, and with the with the temperatures forecast over the next few days here in Colorado, it's supposed to get in the 70s at the upper elevations, 80s in the plains. We are probably going to be looking at more snowmelt. It is yet to be seen if we'll see snowmelt at the upper elevations. Another graph here that shows snowpack plotted, the percent of normal snowpack plotted on elevation. This can give an indication of what the hydrograph might look like. So just trying to display some of the different ways our tools and our data can be displayed. So looking at nationwide precip, now if you'll remember back to the snowpack map that I showed earlier, it was clear that snowpack was very poor across the southern half of the United States. Precipitation, though, however, looks a lot better across much of the country, with the exception of Colorado, where it is a bit drier. And I would also point out that at least in southwest Colorado, the majority of the green that we're seeing here, the near normal, is actually due to precipitation that we received back in October. So that precipitation is not very influential at this point. Most of that actually ran off. But nonetheless, I think that's what's driving a fair amount of the better, more optimistic runoff, which you'll see in a future slide here. We also provide precipitation graphs and you can turn on and off different years by simply selecting it and then hovering over it to see what the comparison is. But precipitation in Colorado as of 2 days ago was 81% of median. And then you can also view this using the maps. So view it in different ways and get basin-wide totals and summaries. So here's what I'm getting at from earlier, 90% of median precipitation since October 1st, when the water year started, through today, or a few days ago in this case, in the San Juans. But if we wind up removing, sorry, I've been pointing at the wrong screen here. If we remove October and we just take November 1 through today, you can actually see that that number dives off significantly. So there's ways to manipulate the maps to show different data and isolate certain things if that's what you're looking for. Another data type that we collect is soil moisture, as I mentioned. These soil moisture sites are at the Soil Climate Analysis or SCAN network, so that's why you're seeing these values out east. We have a number of these sensors out west, and the data, the period of record for those sensors is a bit shorter than the precipitation and temperature, so, or precipitation and snow water equivalent. So the data record is not as robust, and the comparison is a little bit more loose, and then the values can kind of be all over the place. But they do still provide some information. So just use it with the caveat that you know that you got to train your tools that you build on the fact that the data record's not that long. So that last graphic was looking at the 8-inch sensor, and here we are looking at the 20-inch depth sensor. So we have depths of 4, 8, 20, and sometimes 40. We also sometimes have 2-inch soil depths, and we report all of that information. One of the reasons why I think we're seeing values above normal here is because we're actually seeing snowmelt, particularly in the southern half of the country where we've seen those warmer temperatures, and that has actually infiltrated down to the 20-inch sensor. And at this point, we are typically not wetting up those soil depths, but that's why we're looking at these values above normals, because we are seeing those soils getting infiltrated by moisture down to 20 inches. We also collect reservoir data, as I mentioned earlier. You can click on any of these dots in IMAP. This is the tool that I've been referring to, and it will actually pull up all of that data for you. And I'll highlight that here in a little bit. And so right now, reservoirs are a bit all over the place, and we don't really report on why reservoirs are where they are, because we don't actually manage that data for each of the reservoirs. We just collect it and ingest it into our databases, which gives us a better understanding of where things are at, but not necessarily why. Many reservoirs are managed different ways for many reasons, from when the melt happens, when peak runoff occurs, to when irrigation is needed, both storing and releasing at given times of year. And hopefully you guys all know about that. But if you don't, feel free to reach out to your irrigation district or your reservoir management company. Another way to look at the data is this longer term time series of where reservoirs have been in the past and where they are. In this case, we're taking all of the reservoirs in the given basins here, adding them up and providing a time series, a long-term time series. We also have the entire cumulative state of Colorado, and you can see that this is percent of median for that time of year. Okay, getting into some of the last slides here. Jumping into streamflow forecast, I always like to start off with this particular graphic, because while this is not a streamflow forecast tool, what it does is it does give you an idea of what the snowpack was in a given year and what the runoff response was. So if there's a few years that you want to key on that were of interest to you, of value to you, or may compare to what you think might happen this year, you can turn those years on and off here in the right legend or toolbox. And so in this case, black is this year. This is the snowpack on this line here, and then the dotted black line is stream flow at the given time. In this case, I turned on 2018 and 2002 So here is 2002 and here's 2018. And you can see what the stream flow response was, what the hydrograph was. So in 2018, while the snowpack was not high on the Gunnison River and Grand Junction, it did persist longer. And with that, it actually helped preserve a little bit more hydrograph. It's very, very little bit. You can see a slight bump in there. Whereas in 2002, snowpack melted much earlier and there was a little response here, but otherwise leveled out. Now, if we compare to, say, normal snowpack, which is the green line, and normal runoff, which is the green dotted line, you can see that the hydrograph response is much more considerable. So again, while this tool is not actual forecasting, it can help you get an idea of what was the snowpack in 1 year, what was the runoff. I think this is always a great spot to start off because it can give you an idea of where snowpack or stream flows are and snowpack is right now. But moving into nationwide stream flow forecast right now, we generate stream flow forecasts every month based on the snow course and the SNOTEL data. For the most part, SNOTEL data is what dominates the stream flow forecasts. But with every month, you can see here, you can see here on March 1, this is when the latest stream flow forecasts were generated. And again, they're based on predominantly snowpack and precipitation and stream flow values. Again, kind of going along with what we saw in snowpack. Snowpack is stream flows are a bit better in the north, mainly around the Yellowstone and Rin River Basin and then central Idaho, but everywhere else, stream flows are looking below normal. You're probably unable to see these particular values, but hopefully we can get into the demonstration portion. I can pull this up and paste the link into the chat, and you can open it up yourself and then zoom into your area and click on those links for your reference. Zooming into Colorado, and now you can actually see the values here. Again, just showing that snowpack has degraded in the southern half of the state, looking at worse runoff. They're slightly better in the north, but keep in mind that these streamflow forecasts were produced based on March 1 data. They come out, usually within the first 3 to 4 working days of the month. So some time has elapsed since these forecasts were generated, and we need to keep in mind what has happened over the course of the month since these streamflow forecasts have happened or were generated. Zooming in a little bit further back into the Colorado headwaters and the Gunnison River Basin, I circle this area because I'm actually going to be giving a presentation here this evening to a conservation district here in Colorado, and I'll be highlighting these areas. This is the Grand Mesa of Colorado. A large amount of snow accumulates on the Grand Mesa, even though it's not really that high. A lot of snow does accumulate here, and it's kind of an interesting case. So you can zoom in if you'd like, and you can click on both the points and just the general basin, and you'll get pop-ups, and I'll get into that here in a little bit. So here's how the streamflow forecasts are distributed in kind of a graphical sense. We have these tables, which actually show the most probabilistic outcome, the 50% exceedance in the middle. And then there are the bounds, or kind of the range of outcomes that could occur based on the conditions that we're seeing. So let's say your magic 8-ball tells you that there's going to be a lot of rain or a lot more snow in the remainder of the year. Then you might want to hedge your bets and look at the 30 or the 10% exceedance projections. Conversely, if you know things are going to be drier in the future, then you would want to hedge your bets on the drier scenarios. And in this case, you can see that this is the percent of median down bottom, and these are the actual volumes, because we produce streamflow volumetric outflows, usually from April 1 through, say, July 31st, or a number of given different periods. This is the total flow, 135,000 acre feet, say, or 96,000 acre feet to go through this particular stream gauge In this case, this is the Blue River at Dillon, the inflow into Dillon Reservoir at the very Colorado headwaters. And then we produce that for a whole bunch of different stream gauges on the way in the Colorado headwaters. And then I'll actually go to the next slide and show the Gunnison River Basin. So there are a number of different outputs for the major basins, a number of different stream points, as you saw on the map. Another way we express this is through these time series graphs. These are each of the monthly forecasts and the values that have come up and how they have changed over time. In the background there are some weekly updates. This is not available to the public, but it is available to us. It's experimental right now, and we are just testing it out, seeing how it works internally before we start putting this out to the public. But I thought I'd put this up there because it gives you an idea of what has changed over the course of the month. Exactly in this case, we haven't reached April yet, but we're all kind of hanging in the balance, waiting to know what's going on, and this helps guide that. So based on the conditions that we've seen and the automated forecasting runs, it shows that there is probably going to be a decline, at least till based on the information that we've had in these stream flow forecasts come April. Now, if things change and we get a considerable amount of precipitation, then we might see an increase in the forecast, but I'll tell you right now, that's not in the forecast, unfortunately, and I will be getting into that here in a little bit. So this is just looking at the Gunnison River Basin and some of the different products or the different stream gauges that we collect. And this is for all of the Western United States. We produce these stream flow forecasts. One thing that I've been alluding to but haven't really highlighted is that these forecasts do take into account future precipitation. Excuse me one second. And the way they take into account future precipitation is through statistical means of what normally happens. So like I was mentioning earlier, if your magic 8-ball is always right and it knows that we are going to have below normal precipitation going forward, you would want to hedge your bets on those lower forecasts because we're not going to get the precipitation that we typically would. So the forecasts are going to be less skillful or earlier in the year because there is still so much more time for the winter to progress. Forgive me. Okay, so moving on into the last few slides, our weather forecast. I hope you all are paying attention to the drought monitor. Right now, things are pretty dry out west, and also in Florida. My parents live in Florida, and I've heard a lot about how dry it's been, not just this year, but longer term, it seems. So just a quick plug for the U.S. Drought Monitor. So what are we forecasted to see going forward here? Well, right now, the 8 to 14 day and the 3 to 4 week temperature outlook, which should just about complete March, is looking extremely warm. And of course, that's not good for Colorado in the west because the warm winds up sucking up the moisture, sublimating the snow and what moisture we do have in the soils. Looking out into the 3-month seasonal temperature outlook, again, things look warm, maybe not quite as warm as in the last 2 graphics, but indications show that it's probably going to be warmer than equal chances. Looking at precipitation into the next 7 days, at least in the Southwest, we are going to be left high and dry. And even in Montana, and once you get out of the Pacific Northwest, it's really looking pretty dry in the next 7 days. So this is total precipitation forecast in the next 7 days. Moving out a little bit further into the future, we're looking at the 18 to 14 day precipitation outlook. Most of the models are indicating that it's going to be dry, but perhaps with a little bit of precipitation. Just keep in mind that these longer term forecasts are not very skillful, and I'll get into that here in a little bit. And then looking out through the middle of March for monthly precipitation, there's right now the models are indicating equal chances of above or below normal precipitation. But there are some indications that it's going to be quite dry as we transition into the next 3-month period, or the next 2 months, because we're almost towards the end of March here. Still looking pretty dry looking forward. And then as we look out beyond that for the long term, if you're watching the news, you've probably seen that there's been people talking about a super El Nino. I'm not familiar with this term at all, but there is a pretty good model guidance that we are going to go into an El Nino for this coming winter. And that's indicated by the percent chance here indicated by these red bars. It is possible that we could go into neutral, but right now it looks like El Nino. And then my last slide here, excuse me, just shows what typically happens in El Nino years. This might be a little bit difficult to see, but in the working from top left to right and then downward, you can see the strength of the El Ninos as we work through, and then you're looking here at some of the very weak El Ninos. You can see that El Nino typically does, or has, I should say, provided more precipitation in the southern half of the country, Florida, the Gulf. But that kind of tends to wane a little bit as you get to the weaker El Ninos. So I think it's worth saying that you have to take this with a grain of salt and look at your area. I know that in Colorado we can have a slightly higher chance of above normal precipitation in southern Colorado, but it doesn't often happen. It's not something that I would hang my hat on by any means. So unfortunately, it looks like we're looking forward to more dry conditions, warm here in our area in Colorado, and probably even the West at this point. Hopefully this El Nino does materialize and provides a little bit more precipitation, but only time will tell.
Thank you, Brian, for providing this information. Third section of this webinar, I would like to ask you, how can the public access this information and, use it for their own operations or other endeavors?
Yeah, great questions. Great question. And if Haley and Kendra don't mind, I'd be happy to kind of open this up. I'll start off by showing a few of the tools that I've already highlighted. And if we want, we can make this a little bit more interactive. Do we still want to do it that way?
Yes, let's do it.
Okay, great. Forgive me while I change my perspective and you might get more of a profile view of me. But I'm going to move to this screen here. I will call up the interactive map. That there. Okay, so let's start off by showing Snowpack. And you know what else I'll do? I will copy and paste the web address. And you'll notice how long the web address is. The variables are contained within the web address. Whoops. Let me, forgive me. And with the variables contained in the web address, you can actually make changes to the variables in the web address if you wish, if you're much of a coder or programmer. Let's see. So go ahead and feel free to click on that link and start moving around in there. You can zoom in by just using the scroll bar on your mouse. So one thing that I like to do, and to emulate the tools and map products that I was showing earlier, I click on station and basin conditions, and snow water equivalent, if needed, you can select the different elements that you would like here. Also know that the selections will change based on the output of the map. So if you click on station conditions, you will get a lot more options here to display the data. And the same goes for the next header down under parameter, and you can expand and collapse these sections by clicking on the header. In this case, I'm going to click on this, and if I want to view the 1st of March or any day, I can scroll through the date, and as long as your internet connection is fast enough, it should iterate pretty quickly, and you'll see the changes in the map. You can click on Go to Now, and it'll take you right back to today. Other ways to view the data, I showed records earlier. You can click on records. You can show things by percentile, percents of median, whether it's the period of record or the long-term median. And some of these things, this is a nuanced tool because because the data, we're trying to keep the data true to itself. So don't hesitate to reach out to us if you have questions or would like us to help you customize these tools. But just know that it is a bit nuanced and it's not always 100% customizable, but there's infinite options that you can provide in terms of data outputs here. So, and then real quickly, I will show just streamflow forecasts. You have to make sure that streamflows are selected, go to element, and then click on streamflow forecasts. And now you've switched over to streamflow forecasts. And one of my favorite parts, IMAP is the tool that I pretty much always go to. You can click on a basin and stations and data will pop up. You can click on sites and access the site. So here's those streamflow forecasts that I was talking about. You can access the metadata and also data reports. I'm going to go back to snow water equivalent. And in this case, because I went to a monthly parameter, which is streamflows, I need to go back to daily for Snowpack. And here I can click on a basin and get those AWS plots. And I can click on it right here and it will open up a new web page with that graph. Same thing for a given site. And click on it. There's also ways up here to access different tools. And this will be the last thing that I show before I open up the questions. You can go to, say, basin plots, click on Colorado, and you can access those basin plots. There's air temperature that you can display for given basins, states. Yeah, I think you saw before that I selected Colorado, but there's a number of other states that are available. You can look at reservoirs. You can look at comparisons of snowpack at elevation. And then, oh, one other thing I should show is report generator, which is the data tools that we provide. So if you're going to pull data, such as Snowpack or whatever it is, you can actually pull the tabular data from report generator. And unfortunately, there we go. Did it get removed? Anyway, you can access the data through that, or you can also use web services, which will allow you to actually pull the data. So if you know how to write code in Python or VBA or any of a number of coding languages, you can actually pull the data yourself directly from the web pages. So, all right, I am now happy to answer your questions. Sorry, I went a little bit longer there, but I hope that gives you at least a primer on how to get to our data. Are there any questions or any data outputs people would like to see?
At this time, everyone on this call, it is open, the floor is open to questions. Please use the Q&A section or the chat to type in your questions and we will relay them on. I would like to start with a question though, from myself. You have mentioned most everything in this presentation so far is west-wide. Can you speak towards any eastern information or updates?
Yeah, great question. So already mentioned the Soil Climate Analysis Network, which is at the low elevations. That data is collected at select sites in the Western US, as you saw. There is also talk, as Congress has asked us to investigate a SNOTEL network in the East. So we are in the process of investigating the installation of a SNOTEL network in the East. I am not privy to what has come of that investigation. It is not complete at this point, but Congress has asked us to look at that. So right now, no SNOTEL network in the East that is run federally. There are a few state programs, as I understand it, but I am not too, I don't know too much about those networks.
Thank you. So far, nothing has been typed into the Q&A section. So I'm going to take this, opportunity and ask another one of my questions while we wait for anybody else to type something. At the beginning of your presentation, you had mentioned that survey data is normally recorded January 1st to June 1st. Why is information normally not recorded in like the September, October, November, December range as well in some areas?
Yeah, wonderful question. There's a number of reasons for that. One, that data, well, one is a bit risky to collect because it's earlier in the year. In the Mountain West, actually, you either want to have no snow or you prefer to have more snow, especially because we use snowmobiles or skis to get into some of these locations. So access can be a bit more difficult in the fall months as snowpack begins to build. Also, data collection at that time or data use at that time, specifically from the snow courses, provides little correlation, little skillful correlation to the stream flows at that point. So it's really not worth the effort to go out there and get them at that point in the year.
Thank you. We have a very quiet audience today.
There is one question. Can you say anything about how what's happening here in the US, like El Nino, relates to the globe? Same, different, or not sure?
Personally, that's not our forte. Here is weather prediction. I think that's what you're getting at with that question. It's really hard to tell. And I was just on a call with the Colorado Climate Center yesterday, and even they provided no real indication of what's really causing this. I mean, I think from a weather standpoint, they can explain that we can explain there's been a blocking high. It's just been dominated by a ridge of high pressure out west, and that's why the East Coast has been so cool and snowy and wet, as I understand it. But I can't really answer that question. That's just not something I'm that up on. Sorry.
That's fair. Thank you, Brian.
We'll do a last call for more questions. And in the meantime, we are coming up to the end of our time together. So I would like to thank Mr. Brian Domonkos for spending his morning with us and sharing this information. And at the moment, there are no more questions in the Q&A. So I would like to turn this back over to Haley for any parting comments.
Yes, thank you, Brian and Kendra, for sharing valuable information today. And thank you all for joining. If you're interested in continuing this conversation, please stay connected with NatGLC and the USDA on YouTube and social channels. And keep an eye out for future events and resources at grazinglands.org. Have a wonderful rest of the day, and thank you so much for joining us, everyone. Take care.
Thank you, Kendra. Thank you, Haley. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.